and why this culture changed so often. When it comes to people moving and immigrating to different areas, there's a constant flow of cultural changes, diffusion, which results in them having different cultural identities. Growing up in a diaspora of Armenian immigrants, I've experienced firsthand just how often our cultural patterns changed and the exposure I've had to culture and how that changed as well. Today I will be discussing some cultural changes throughout our lives and the phenomena which they take form in. This is known as distance decay, assimilation, and acculturation, and I will give some examples towards the end. First, let's discuss distance decay. Calvin Dempsey discusses distance decay in her Geographic Realm, published February 7th of 2024. It can be defined as when two places or populations are further apart, the less of a probability they have to interact with one another. This is represented here. Increased distance from two places, the less of an interaction and connection they have with one another. Mind you, distance decay can be represented in numerous ways. For example, when someone moves from one place to another, they're experiencing distance decay as they have less of an interaction due to such an increased distance from their home country. This is why we feel homesick. Or neighboring countries might have a lot of similarities and connections with one another because they reside so close to one another. Next, let's get into acculturation and assimilation. These can be both defined from Barbara Crane's book, Intro to Cultural Geography. And acculturation is when individuals adopt practices, beliefs, and values from another culture, all while retaining their own cultural identity. This can be represented here. The green is your own home country, the original one you have, which is also being introduced to and immersed from newer cultures and newer ideas throughout your life. Notice how you are keeping a lot of your own cultural identity, which is a good thing. However, assimilation is defined as when individuals adopt other practices from cultures while losing much of your own cultural identity. So instead of you keeping a lot of your culture, the newer cultural components are taking over your identity, and you're losing a lot of your connection with your culture from before. This negatively impacts a lot of minority cultures because when people are exposed to bigger, more prominent ones throughout the world, they have less of a connection with their original identity. So how is this reflected in different diasporas throughout the world? Well, the Armenian population in Fresno can be addressed in this case. David Zunyan wrote for the AGBU article in 1996, way back, discussing how the Fresno population was thriving at a 30,000 count. Well, since that date, there has been a lot of time and many new kids have been born and have existed in this diaspora. They have had a lot less exposure to the Armenian country through this distance decay, and throughout the years they have assimilated more and more into American culture because no other changes have occurred for them to have an increased amount of connection with the Armenian culture. Now, in comparison, me living in the Los Angeles diaspora of Armenians, I have experienced a significantly less amount of distance decay, and this is due to the fact that I have exposure to newer Armenians who are constantly moving into this diaspora. I have such a strong community of Armenians through the schooling I've had, the languages I'm constantly exposed to, and also the Armenian businesses and communities which reside and I constantly interact with. This results in me being able to acculturate to American culture while retaining my very important Armenian identity. Overall, distance decay, assimilation, and culture are existing in all forms throughout many different people's lives and many different cultures. It's very important to understand how these processes take place, to understand how they impact different places around the world, and how they may impact you sitting here also. Thank you for listening, and I hope you understand more about different ways cultural changes can occur. Thank you.